afternoon. Glad that all of you could join us. Actually, those at the back, if you would like, you might want to come forward. I know we have tried this before and it didn't succeed, but I'm going to try it again because it's a very, very big room. So, it'd be good if you could just all come in and just crowd around here. No? No? Please? Pretty please? Okay, great. So glad that you could join us to today's session. It's really about building sustainable social ventures, right? Incubation, investing, and partnerships. And I guess it's all very clear that we all see the importance in it, and we are all, that's the reason why we're all here. That's the reason why we are all connected here as a panel. But I mean, the main question is probably to ask is how do we go about doing it, right? So today, I'm very happy to have a very exceptional group of panelists with me on stage. Starting from my left, I have Christina from Global Social Enterprise Network. Christina actually wears many hats as well. She also wears another hat in Unlimited. Unlimited is one of those brands that is very well recognized in this sector and has presence in many countries as well. She leads the team at GSEN. And then next we have Wong Yong. Wong Yong actually is the President and CEO of Kervis Partners. So they are an impact investment firm, and they're also looking at they also run their own social incubator program as well. And they're based in South Korea. Right. Pat Sian, she is the Senior Vice President as well as the head of DBS Foundation. DBS Foundation operates in 6 different countries, and they provide grants and incubation support. They work with partners as well, locally based in Singapore. And then we have Anthony. Anthony is Business Director, Policy and Research as well, in the Hong Kong Council for Social Service. They also partner very closely with HSBC, looking at the Social Enterprise Business Center that was set up in Hong Kong. Right? And then lastly, we have Stefan. Stefan is co-founder and originator of Viva Ventures, but he himself is an entrepreneur. He himself has run businesses in Novozymes and has also spoken in many other panels on looking at how we can build sustainable ventures, both in the sector as well as through corporations. And I think he'll speak a bit about that as well later on. Right, so the panel that we have assembled today really is all individuals who are all interested in supporting social ventures, right, and helping them to achieve success. Right, and really, and I guess the thing that we think about really is perhaps they have different ways of looking at success and different ways of getting there, right? And as you hear from the panelists in just a bit, you realize that they adopt different models and approaches, right? And some would call what they're doing incubation, and some would call it something else, right? But ultimately, they all share a common thread, right? And helping early stage social ventures come out stronger in the process. And so this is what we'll be discussing today. Now, although we may not have all the answers, but I really hope that we will be able to glean some useful insights from today's session. And I know that we have a very good crowd at AVPN, so I'm also hoping to hear a bit from you. I've set a considerable amount of time for Q&A later on, so I hope that it could be an interactive session that we have this afternoon. Right? So just to get the conversation going, I will just probably just ask each of the panelists just down the line, starting from Christina, to share a bit about your organization, right, as well as what success looked like to you, and also what's the initiatives by your organizations to help social ventures achieve success. So, Christina.
Great, thank you so much. So I wear 2 hats today. So I come from Unlimited. Unlimited is the foundation for social entrepreneurs. It was set up 13 years ago in the UK, has supported about 23,000 social entrepreneurs in the UK in the past years. From idea to pilot to getting people to be full-time social entrepreneurs and to investment readiness as well. So really a range of programs in the UK, and we can touch upon how those programs work. 3 years ago, Unlimited launched something called the Global Social Entrepreneurship Network, which I run. And this network is a network of organizations supporting social entrepreneurs in the world in 50 countries. I say it's organizations supporting social entrepreneurs because I could say incubators, accelerators, but it really depends actually on what terms are used in which countries. So really all types of organizations, with some of which are working with the Unlimited model, some of which are working with really different models. So for instance, in Asia, our members are NPI in China, SE Insights in Taiwan, Root Impact in South Korea, CICIP in Vietnam, Change Fusion in Thailand, Unlimited in Indonesia, Unlimited in India, and a couple of others. I hope I didn't forget too many people. So really what the perspective that I'm coming from is this diversity of support methodologies that people use to support social entrepreneurs. And really what brings us together as a network is how we work with early stage social entrepreneurs. So people who are at the beginning of their journeys as entrepreneurs. Really looking at that end of the spectrum, because this is where the most difficulties arise for social entrepreneurs. This is where they need the most support, the most attention, the most connections, networks, and advice to guide them through all the barriers, all the challenges, to get to a point where they have sustainable impact and they have a sustainable venture. And I guess, your question around what success looks like. For us, it's really about sustaining the impact, being able to sustain the social impact of a venture. I think just to give a global perspective of why it's so important to support early stage social entrepreneurs. So there are about, and it's a rough number, but there are about 50 million social entrepreneurs starting up every year in the world. And we are only able to support a few thousand of them. So what happens to all the others? What happens to all the other ideas that can potentially change the world but don't get enough attention when they start and potentially just fail and get ignored? So really, I think that there is more attention needed at the beginning of the journey, really more attention needed to those entrepreneurs who are starting up, if we really want to make a difference with social entrepreneurship. And really, we're all here to see how we can scale up those ideas, how we can make them really successful. And a lot of people here at AVPN are looking at investing in them, for instance, or supporting them with venture philanthropic methodologies. It's great, but I think that a lot of you sometimes complain about the pipeline and where do those entrepreneurs come from, where they come from. The people who support them at early stage, those who are able to identify those great ideas, those great ventures, those great entrepreneurs, and get them to a point where we can pass them on in a way to investors and venture philanthropists. Just to give you a really brief overview of the types of methodologies or the types of approaches that are used to support them. And again, it's there is no one-size-fits-all, but to give you an idea, some organizations are working on a skill-based support methodology. So they will look at the skill set of an entrepreneur and really design programs based on the skills that the entrepreneur needs to have to succeed. Some others will really look at the individual behind the venture, look at the entrepreneur and see how they can design a program which is really tailor-made to the needs of that entrepreneur. Just to give you an example, if you have a young person who's going to set up a social venture for sports activities, for instance, in a disadvantaged community, this young person will need very, very different skills and very different support from, for instance, someone who's a retired person from a bank and who's setting up a social venture around financial inclusion or financial literacy. So those two social entrepreneurs have great ideas and great ventures, but as individuals, they will have very different needs in terms of support. Some organizations are looking at a theme, at a very specific theme, and have very specialized sectorial expertise to bring to those entrepreneurs. So for instance, one of our members, the WWF in Switzerland, is looking at entrepreneurs working on climate change issues. So very specific, sector-specific needs and expertise brought to them. Investment readiness is another aspect of people, of organizations that we're working with. So they will bring ventures to a point where they are really ready to be invested in. So very, very intensive programs to look at how they can kind of pass through the investment readiness stage. Some other people will look at space and how they can bring programs specifically around space-based support, so co-working spaces, residential support. And finally, some other organizations are really looking at a holistic ecosystem approach, bringing people, bringing corporates, bringing universities, and other different partners to enable a really dense network of support around the social entrepreneurs. I have many more things to say, but I will stop here.
Ong
It is great to be here. So Kravis was established in 2004. We are based in Seoul, Korea. We invest and we co-found companies, social startups. Until now, we have 13 companies, and their total revenue is $15 million last year, and their valuation is $45 million. Mission is awaken your potential to impact the world. We believe that everybody has the potential to impact the world, and we believe that at the same time that everybody should awaken each other to impact the world together. Our vision is to foster 100 entrepreneurs. And we say this because we believe that these 100 entrepreneurs will do the same for other 100 entrepreneurs, and we will have the multiplying effect. So basically, we do impact investing, but a better way to describe Kravis is Impact Ventures Alliance. This means two things. One, we are a group of entrepreneurs. We're a group of people who wants to challenge the most difficult problems, the most social agendas that are out there that are big and huge and difficult to solve. Second thing, we have a common mission, awaken your potential to impact the world. Of course, each company has their own mission, education, environment, but as a whole, we like to pursue that as pioneers, especially to show people that awakening people to impact the world is important. We invest into seed level and startup level companies, and we don't limit our investment areas, but education, environment, and sharing economy are the ones that we focus on. And there are certain criteria that we look into when we make the investment. One would be is a company tech-driven, IT. That's important because we believe that's where the innovation comes from. The second thing is scalability in terms of region. Is the business model scalable outside of wherever it started? It can be. Could it have global impact in other regions as well? Could it establish supply chain management outside their country or their region? That's an important aspect for us. The third aspect would be, does the company have strong, or can it build a strong intangible assets? And I say that meaning such as brands, content, or any sort of intellectual properties, because these intangible assets can move far away than tangible assets. They can cross borders. They are. We consider them very important these days. So what is our goal? We do impact investment, we do incubation. We support these entrepreneurs. Our main focus is on entrepreneurs. We are their strongest supporters. We're there for them. And there are three things that we'd like to achieve. The first one is eliminating inefficiency or repetitive business decisions. A lot of startup companies when they lack experiences, when they lack knowledge, when they lack resources, what happens is that they go through very inefficient process of making decisions, or they revoke their decisions and they make repetitive decisions, and this takes a lot of time, and it slows down the business. And for small organizations or small companies like startups, speed is really important. So we believe that this is one of the most important things that we need to achieve with these companies. The second thing is acquiring talented people. I say this because acquiring talented people is difficult for any leaders at any stage of the company. But especially for startup companies, what happens is that people tend to pull in the ones that they are easy to pull in, not the excellent ones. For example, your friends or your families are the ones that you can get your hands on. But what we are telling our companies is that you need to find someone better than you. You need to find someone who has the expertise. You need to find someone who is in more difficult situations than you. And we believe that this is one of the important things that we need to achieve with the companies. The third thing is obtaining a mechanism for sustainable revenue. This is hard. Obtaining a sustainable revenue is one of the hardest things for any kind of companies, for small and big. What is sustainable revenue? It can mean different things for different organizations or different companies, but for many, we believe that it is making a customer come back and repurchase your service or products. So if you don't have this mechanism, you will be constantly looking for customers. You will be constantly looking for different methods to pull in the customers. So these three are the things that we believe are important for especially early stage startup companies. And how do we achieve that? There are many ways, but I would like to address just three things. One, we have something called Crevice Town. So when we make the investment, we don't just give them the money. We give you the money, and you do your thing, and become a good company. Now, that rarely happens. What we do is we say that okay, we're going to invest, and I want you to come in to our office space and work with us. And that is why in the very beginning that we invest and co-found these companies together. So we have right now about eight companies, more than 85 people working in the same physical space. We call it a town because it's an open space. It's a very dynamic atmosphere where startup peers can see each other, which is a positive stimulus for everyone. At the same time, what it does is that when you recruit someone, it's easier for them because when people come in and apply for these jobs for startups, they're worried. Is it going to be a good job, or am I making the right decisions? But once you come into this atmosphere and see that there are other people who are like you, making similar decisions, working at these companies, trying to achieve the same goals, impacting the world, then it's it's easier for them to make those decisions. The second thing is we work as one team. What I mean by one team is that, like I said, we have strong focus on entrepreneurs. So we have weekly and monthly strategic meetings with these people. And what we want to achieve with these meetings is, not just checking up on how you're doing, but every business goes through has three things: people, money, and opportunity. What we want to do is we want to eliminate, like I said, inefficiency in the making business decisions. So we help them how good decisions are made, and we hope that this can be repeated within the team. So we have these weekly meetings, monthly meetings, strategic meetings, and many times we have irregular meetings. They just call upon us, and we have these issues, and we want to talk about it. How can we solve this issue? That's where we have strengthened. The third is we call this a town economy because we have 8 different companies, and these companies have different expertise. What these companies can do is they can collaborate on a single project together, or they can share clients, or they can even build profit, revenue sharing models together. When you're, small-sized companies, 4 to 6 people or 10 people, you lack resources. It's difficult to find those resources outside. So what you can do is you can just reach out. It's a very flexible environment. You can say, hey, we have this project that we want to do with you. And because we work in the same environment, these people know each other very well, and who's good at what. So we are sort of making this, we call it a town economy, and this is working, and this is building up synergies for the startup companies. Okay, so that's it.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Before I just begin introducing the work that we do and also talk a little bit to answer Kevin's questions, can I just ask for a show of hands, how many people here are representing funder communities? funder bodies? Okay, and how many are representing intermediary bodies, capacity builders, and so forth? Okay, great, thank you. This gives me a sense of the room. Okay, great. So thanks. Hi, I'm Pat Sian from DBS Foundation. Very quickly, I guess just the first question about our approach towards incubation. I think DBS Foundation was formed 2 years ago in 2014 as the corporate foundation for DBS Bank, and its focus is to nurture innovative and impactful social enterprises in Asia, and we currently operate in 6 countries: Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, India, and Indonesia. That's 6. Sorry. We typically operate along 2 models. First, we would fund programs and partner up with program organizations, like many of you intermediaries here, to work with social enterprises in your respective markets. And secondly, we also have direct grant funding for social enterprises in those markets. So we are a philanthropic organization. We currently make grants as our primary channel. Our approach to building sustainable social ventures, particularly at the early stage, is that we want to take a life cycle approach by working the ecosystem so that it benefits the social enterprises. What do we mean by that? We are quite, we're taking a page here from SME development to see which stage of development really can our support make the most difference. And we've more or less over the past few years identified a sweet spot for us, and that's after revenue generation. So in other words, it's already running, it's an operating business, but before they reach Series A. So sort of around that level, which I think all the panelists here will sort of agree with me seems to be also the area that needs the most support right now in Asia. So that's the space we operate in. We took some time to get there to identify really where we can make the greatest impact with the amount of resources we have. So example of some of the programs that we run, we've run an Inclusive Finance Accelerator program in India in partnership with Village Capital, VilCap. Some people are here today. We also have an earlier stage incubation program with SE Insights in Taiwan. We also run a very early ideation stage tech incubation program in Singapore, combating aging as an issue, as a social issue. And also we have some bootcamp programs that we've done last year in Indonesia to work with organizations that are trying to move from a nonprofit into a social enterprise model. They're not all a bed of roses, so I'm sure we can share more about that later on. But I think just very quickly, some observations that we had that are really important for particularly funding organizations to bear in mind when you're working with these types of activities to build sustainable social ventures. Firstly is to be very clear about the motivations between the funding organization as well as the partners that you're working with. We sometimes see that there may be complementary but not necessarily aligned objectives. So for example, a partner organization may be very keen to have a good pipeline, a good throughput of organizations that they want to incubate. And that may shift perspectives about what you're looking for as your outcomes as well. You want to see as many organizations as you can go through your program. But if a funder organization is saying, look, I want to see social impact at the end of this, I want to see scalable organizations at the end of this, you're unlikely to necessarily go with just the number of organizations. You may just want to make sure you pick the good ones. So there needs to be a good alignment of motivations. The second thing is that we really emphasize the point of partnerships. Organizations that go out there saying that they are the best and they are the only one that can frankly make a difference are probably pulling something, because we don't see that. Every single program we've worked in, there has to be a sense of who are the other players need to involve in that ecosystem. And the journey of building that sustainable social venture requires all of those resources to be in play. So the successful intermediary or the funding organization that can make that happen should be the one that can see those opportunities and mobilize that as well. The third thing is that we feel that the way that we support social ventures should be driven by the needs of the ventures and less so by the models of incubation. It sounds a little bit like semantics, but it's actually really important because we've realized that many social ventures have been put into categories that have been defined by other, maybe more commercial models, when actually what they need, specific needs that they have, could actually be quite different. But in the interest of trying to standardize things and trying to institutionalize the incubation process, some of these needs have been overlooked. And so that's something to bear in mind. Last but not least is the appetite for failure and innovation. Funding organizations, particularly that are investing in intermediary programs, also need to have a realistic appreciation for the risk and innovation that needs to come into the incubation process, particularly at early stage. So it relates back to my earlier point about the focus on throughputs. If you want lower sense of failure, you go for throughputs. But if you have the appetite to absorb a greater impact outcome, then you may be able to get stronger social enterprises at the end of that channel. So just sharing that perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Maxine. Anthony?
Hi, Anthony from the Hong Kong Council of Social Service. I think some of you may know about the council, but for those who have no idea about what we are doing, maybe I just spend a little bit of time to introduce our council. We are a very kind of traditional kind of NGO, umbrella NGO in Hong Kong. We have, next year will be our 70th anniversary. We traditionally we are providing support to local social service NGO, but about 8 years ago, we set up a center called Social Enterprise Business Center, supporting different social enterprises in Hong Kong. Because in Hong Kong, most of the social enterprise were started by NGOs. I mean, like 8 years ago, most of them are run by NGOs. But these days, we see a lot of private individuals or private corporations, they embark on this new thing. Our councils traditionally is like a resource platform. So we have these practices and ideas, expertise on social issues like, you can name it. I mean, poverty, elderly, youth, ethnic minorities, whatever issues, we will have a platform to discuss on that. We also leverage on, last maybe a decade or 2 decades, we have started another program on what we call a caring companies program. Now we have a network of over 3,000 companies in Hong Kong. Some of them are multinational companies, and they work with our NGOs very often. And also we have a network of foundations. Some of you may also be joining our Wise Giving network, which we leverage, maintaining dialogues and creating partnerships between foundations and NGOs. So our social enterprise business center is actually leveraging this kind of network, this kind of capacity of our council to support social enterprise in Hong Kong. Now, in terms of defining success, I think it all depends, because we are a platform organization, we will see it from 2 perspectives of how we define success. The first one, of course, is the input and throughput. Like, what we're talking about is actually our capacity as an incubator and our capabilities. The other perspective will be the outcome perspective. Of course, we are incubator, then we sort of have to look at how our incubatees have started and survived their own businesses, right? So I'll come back to that. In terms of capacity, as I said, we have a strong network with different people's NGOs, foundation, and all that, all right? And also, we have resources, because our council, in fact, in Hong Kong, we used to position ourselves as a bridge between the government and the NGO. So we sort of having a quite strong partnership and relationship with the government. So we leverage some of the resources. Like some of you may know that lately the government has set up a couple of funds that support social entrepreneurship and social enterprise in Hong Kong. So we happen to be appointed as one of the intermediaries of the Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development Fund. So then we are able to leverage this kind of financial support. And I think the success is defined not so much by how much we have, but how much we leverage and strategize to deploy different resources, a different network, and different expertise to help social enterprise, different specific social enterprises in their specific context. When we talk about the success of Incubate, of course, some of you would immediately think that, well, we have to make them, survive and sustainable, and also because they are supposed to create social impact, so they have to be impactful. But I think we have to put this definition of success in the perspective of milestone, because as some of these panel speakers here talk about, we're talking about incubation. Incubation is supposed to be at the very beginning, right? So when you're working with an infant baby, you don't talk about whether they can get a university degree or whether they can get a good job or good income. You talk about whether they can speak, they can express, right? So I think if you talk about the Incubate, I think the success would be defined. If you talk about the outcome perspective, then it will be like whether they got inspired, whether they are informed about the social issues and social problems in the context of Hong Kong, of course. And lately, because we are the intermediary, I receive a lot of proposals from all these new social entrepreneurs. I find one of the biggest problem among all these new business starters is that they have a big difficulty of how they formulate the problem in an accurate, precise, and concise way. So I think sharp formulation of a problem, if they would be able to do that, then I would consider that, as an incubator, they very much successful. And the other thing is the pitching, language skills, right, as an infant. So whether you'll be able to deliver and convince your audience that your idea is great and you have a developed business plan and all that. From an input perspective, the success for us is that whether we can establish a system and a strategies that improves our capacity to create outcome for the incubatees. I think this is how we look at the as an incubator, how we define success. One last point is that because we, by nature, we are a platform or umbrella organization, we work with multiple stakeholders, and that is as much a strength as a constraint, right? Because you have a particular notion of success, but your stakeholders is also having their own, right? Particularly the investor. So we have to develop a capacity to struggle and to interact and negotiate with all these stakeholders and come up with a common notion of success, so as to help the incubators to develop their own business. So as an incubator ourselves, we try to engage in all this kind of engagement and dialogue and interaction with all our stakeholders, and try to advocate an alternative definition of success. I think maybe I just stop here and let Stefan too.
Hi, hi. I'm Stefan from Diva Ventures. And yes, Diva is an acronym, and yes, I'm probably also a diva myself. We'll get back to that, I think. Let me just take a step back, because I have a bit of a different perspective on this whole space, and to understand that, let's just wind the clock back a few years. I was hired by a large corporation, by the CEO, to come in and find ways to do basically the pyramid business development for the company. Basically, could we find a way for this big biotech company to have positive high impacts in underserved markets, preferably in frontier markets, and make money on it? So I set out, tried that, failed miserably a few times, pitching some business ideas into business units. The business units at the VP level did not care that the CEO was a sponsor, because they were under more pressure to make more money in the short term. Finally, one venture came through. I got it approved. That's a longer story. Ended up with a bag of money. Ended up working basically out of the CEO's office. 3 years later, I'm in Mozambique. We've got 7 partners. We have about a 30% stake in the business, about $20 million invested. about 3,000 farmers in the value chain, about 2 million trees planted, a big factory, 300 employees, thousands of customers, lots of awards, media attention. It's all great. And about a year later, the whole thing spectacularly fails. So this is the background for Diva. As you can sense, we're focused on what I would call corporate impact venturing specifically. So the power of large corporations to deliver impact through their business solutions. And why? Because we're obsessed with scale. Now, and corporations, essentially, in my view, are agents of scale. So the first question one might ask is, why are there so few successful, large-scaled corporate impact ventures? How many people here have heard of M-Pesa in Kenya, mobile money? I'd expect all of you to put your hands up, but okay, maybe some of you are asleep. So that was started by Vodafone back in the day, and that I would consider an example, probably the best example of a successful scaled, large corporate impact venture that has delivered impressive impacts. But there's so few other examples, so the question is why? Basically because corporations are pretty terrible at early stage business development and innovation, especially if it comes to what I would call radical innovation. And especially when it comes to business model innovation, and especially when you're talking about impact-oriented businesses. And why are they terrible? Because the thing that made them very large corporations in the first place is that they are powerful execution machines, and that they're geared towards that, and they are not powerful innovation machines, at least not radical innovation. So the problem here is that if you want to do impact venturing with corporations, impact ventures usually require some radical stuff, not incremental business development. They require new business models, new partnerships, and working in markets that they usually find to be new and uncomfortable. So you could say that for corporations, there's this pioneer gap as well. Like there's pioneer gaps for social entrepreneurs. There's the same thing for corporations, but it has a different nature. The gap is a bit different. And because there's this gap, you have all these, let's just say, pent-up frustration in large organizations among young talent that have great ideas that their companies could be doing, but they're not doing because they keep running into these walls, these execution walls. So at Diva, what we want to do, or what we are doing, is building a bridge over that pioneer gap. And basically, we're an L3C, a US-based quasi-nonprofit. The basic model is that we raise PRIs and other concessionary funds that enable us to be a co-investor and co-developer with the corporations on their own ideas. So you could say we're basically reducing their opportunity cost, increasing the capabilities in the venture, and forming partnerships and coalitions that they might struggle to do otherwise. A quick step back. Like I said, I failed with the first handful of projects I pitched internally. That was, again, because the opportunity costs were too high. When I went it the first time and pitched for this Mozambican venture, I was asking for X million. I couldn't give details on the business model. I couldn't give details on the financials. They had to just take a chance. The guy that went up after me to pitch back then in 2008, he said, hey, give me the same amount of money, and I think I can develop an enzyme based on our existing enzyme portfolio that reduces blood stains from clothes 4% better with a guaranteed $50 million market with Procter & Gamble. You know, guess who got that one, right? I was told to go and go back to wherever I was smoking, whatever I was smoking. So if you wanted, there's a terrible story about why I actually got the money in the end and actually went forward. It wasn't for noble reasons. So the question about scale, in our view, is, like I said, success is about scale. And when we say scale, we mean scale at international level, and we mean leveraging commercial capital, so getting to the point where it's no longer concessionary funds. We're new, we're only a year old, we have a few corporate partners, corporate co-owners, investors, execution partners, and the first ventures are coming in the pipeline now. So I'm actually looking forward to learning more from my co-panelists here about what good incubation practices are and making sure we don't reinvent wheels or make silly mistakes.
Right. So I guess we have based on the opening remarks, I think what I really got from the first round was really, instead of looking at incubation as a service, like a service that we're providing to somebody, right? It's more of like an investment, right? It's an investment of your time, investment of perseverance, and sometimes even tough love, right? Like telling people like it's time to move on to something else because the idea is not really working. And this whole process certainly is not a one-way ticket to success. And I think it's something that as we work with stakeholders, it's something that we need to make them aware as well. There's going to be risk, there's going to be uncertainties, and everyone must be cognizant of that, right? And supporting social ventures at the early stage is complex. I think that's also a key thing that has been raised, and it's very important to have it, right? And I think my next question to the panel would then be, you've mentioned about all these program designs and all these initiatives that you have, but how about the length and intensity, right? What is a good amount of time to invest into these groups, and what were your challenges in terms of the intensity that you have, and even your capacity, right? I mean, Won-Young, you also mentioned earlier that as you have niche areas like in tech, but that would definitely entail that even within your organization you have to build certain capabilities, and I think that's something that Stefan also mentioned earlier, right? About scale. So if you're scaling up, then what are some capabilities that you have in your team as well to help this to scale? Because not forgetting that these are early stage social ventures, right? So maybe I think we will start with Christina.
I just want to give the opportunity to people to stand up and stretch themselves. So many people, I see faces of sleeping people, and so please stand up, stretch yourself, get a coffee, come back.
After lunch is difficult.
It's okay. So, okay. Yeah, a bit of, okay. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, so I will give a few ideas that come to mind on your question. So a couple of things, it really depends on the level of the entrepreneur. So when we're supporting early stage social entrepreneurs that are limited, from idea to people who are going full time, it really depends on what they need and where they are in their journeys. So we will design a program which is really for them and kind of also designed by them. So we agree milestones and steps and check-in points. So some people will check in with them every week. Some people will check in with them every month. And some people will check in with them every 3 months. And it really depends. So for those people, we have about 30 to 40 what we call award managers. Basically, they are our program managers who work with those entrepreneurs. And each program manager will have in between 30, 35, 40 entrepreneurs to work with over a year. So the time of the support is always 1 year long. And lots of different kind of support opportunities are plugged into that year of support. Training, coaching, peer sessions, mentoring, workshops with corporates, sessions where we introduce them and get them to pitch to investors or to people who will be their customers. So really different types of support. Now, when it comes, for instance, to our investment readiness program, it's slightly different because it's way more intensive. And there, a program manager will work with in between 5 to 10 social entrepreneurs. 10 is really, really a stretch on the person. So we have an idea of 5 per person. And so that's the kind of difference that we have. And it's way more intensive. So it's like, at least weekly check-ins, where the award manager will work very intensively with the entrepreneur to get them to the point where they have to be. And intensive workshops on a very regular basis hosted by our corporate partners to really get them, financial planning, leadership skills, really different types of very, very specific skills that they need to get to be investment ready. And when we look at what's happening over the world, usually people are working at least for 1 year with social entrepreneurs at the early stages. To kind of give you a balance, the overall kind of support, of financial support that goes to them is 14 million. So that's divided by the number of social entrepreneurs. Really, it can go from a couple of £100 to a few thousand in terms of seed funding or debt, or really depending on what the entrepreneur needs. So, not sure if that responds to the question, but a few numbers to give ideas.
So I guess the question is how intense is it to incubate a company, right? Well, it's very intense for us. One reason because we are investing and we are also co-founding a business together. It's basically we're doing it as it is our business. So it's very intense. Another reason would be most of the entrepreneurs that we work with are in their 20s. They're very young entrepreneurs. So these young entrepreneurs have a lot of things that they need. They need to learn about what business is. They need to learn about the social aspects. They need to learn about how to work with people, building teams, making processes, systems, making outputs, customers, everything. So this is a very intense work for us. Last time I calculated the amount of time that we spend with one entrepreneur, it's about 300 hours. So if you count one day as 10 hours, then it's about a month, cumulative. So we do spend that much of time with each entrepreneurs. And also, we invest into seed level and startup level startup companies. We call it Impact Ventures Program. But this is, we name it Impact Ventures Program because it's easy to communicate. But unlike other incubation programs, we do not have deadlines for the program. What we mean by that is because, let me give you a very simple example. You start your own business and you do it for 6 months and you cannot stop it, right? So we see this as a very long-term process. And because these people are in their 20s, very young entrepreneurs, it's a very repetitive process. It's not like you say this one time, okay, you have to do your marketing like this, you have to build your team like this, and then boom, they go, very excellent. It doesn't happen like that. So it's a very long process for us, and it's a very repetitive process for us. So some of the companies that we work with are with us, 3, 5 years, 6 years, and so that's a little bit different from how we work with the companies. But one challenge that we have noticed and observed while we work with the companies is that you have to do a very accurate and very keen reality check with the companies. What I mean by that is because you're doing it as if you're building up your own business. You have your attachments to it. You want to make it happen. You want to. Sometimes you will have to do the CPR. You will have to do everything in your power to make it happen. But at some point, you need to do. You need to go through the checklist. Is this business really making through? Its goals. Is it meeting its goals? Do we really have good teams? Is the revenue good? Are we meeting the social impact? If you don't do this reality check, what happens is that you keep on maintaining the breath, but it's not going anywhere. I say this, I can say this because we've seen those cases ourselves. So to recap, we work with the companies. We do not have certain deadlines. We work very intense hours with the companies, but at some point you do have to do a reality check if that business is worth going or not. And I will say more later on with the challenges that we go through with the startup companies. Yeah.
Actually, for Patson, I think you have been working with a number of intermediary incubators as well. I mean, going forward, as you look at working with incubator partners, what will you be looking out for in an incubator? What are some characteristics of what works and what doesn't, and what's your view on this?
I will tell you that there's no magic answer. In fact, one of the things I wanted to say about length and intensity is that whatever number you are going to hear is probably more a function of coincidence and experience and less so than a formula. So in which case, the point I'm trying to make is that it's really driven by, like similar to what Wan Young has observed, how every institution is progressing in its own development curve. And intensity does not equate to time spent by incubator with enterprise. Intensity can be a variety of things. There will be a stage of development where it is important for you to spend a lot of face time, a lot of consultative time. There will be another stage of development where it's important to let things evolve and let business develop. And then there will be another point in time where you really need to have really serious board-level strategic discussions. So the intensity is less about how much actual time or hours you spend, but really what is the outcome that you want to achieve and making sure that you get there. Length of programs, similarly, I think there's no magic number here. We've worked with programs ranging from a few weeks all the way through to 2 years long. So there's no magic number. It's really whether or not it's getting to the outcome you want. So coming back to your next question about what is it that we're looking for, I think I completely agree with Wan Young about accurate reality check. And likewise for intermediary partners, we have to be very realistic about where do you think you can bring these enterprises that you're working with at the end of this journey, right? To say that we are going to move a group of organizations from ideation stage to Series A within an X number of months to be able to get Y number of dollars invested, to us, we would actually go deep into it and understand, look, how are you actually going to get there? Will you actually get there? Do you have the resources there? And is it realistic that within X months you will get there? And if not, it doesn't mean that we won't work with them, but now let's figure out how can we break this up into pieces so that we are realistic about what we can, as funders and intermediaries can do, but also realistically what can you deliver as value to the enterprises you're working with. Those are some of the kinds of discussions that we have, but broadly speaking, we would be looking for, firstly, a very clear social impact appreciation. We feel that there's a bit of proliferation now about somewhat cookie cutter type models about how enterprises ought to be incubated, sometimes at the expense of recognizing that social impact is almost like a adjunct topic, and with really strong focus on trying to make sure that there is commercial success. Nothing wrong with emphasizing that, and I think it's important to continue to build that, but we need to work with programs that are willing to put social impact front and center, just as important as that commercial success. So a very clear understanding of the social impact, the focus that they in that program. The second thing is competency and staying power. We have incubator programs that currently have proposals that we have gotten that are run by one-man shop, two-man operations. We also have larger institutions that say that, look, we have this sort of side program, so can you please work with us on this side program? We're looking for staying power and commitment to really build enterprises along this journey. If it is as diverse as we've just described, where you could do anything ranging from a few weeks to a couple of years, we need to have some confidence that the intermediary has that staying power. And the competency as well. So, being an expert in a particular social area, social issue, or particular sector is good, but the team should ideally be quite well-rounded in terms of how they want to support the organizations in their cohort. And the last but not least is the recognition of the ecosystem. It is not only an incubator that makes the day, right? You need to have the network to draw on to provide the other resources that would help an enterprise to success. So be it funding, be it mentorship, be it other forms of advice, or in-kind or market channels that you can draw on. And this is also based on research, and I think Christina can back me up on this. The top value to enterprises to get incubated today is actually not funding. It's actually networks and resources. So how do we make sure that is delivered to the enterprise is also important for us to assess.
Yeah, I think anyone here is a social worker? No? Just a couple of hands. I'm a social worker. If you're a social worker, we have this 3 kinds of practice. One is case worker, one is group worker, and one is community worker. I think what we are doing now in the social enterprise business center is like doing community work. When I was learning community work in the university, we talk about first making contact. No, getting to know the community. Of course, you have to know the community. Making contact and bringing people together. Now, what I'm doing now in the council and in the center is like making contact with a lot of different stakeholders and then make sure they can come together. And at the very beginning, you have to make a very hard effort of identify each of them and engage them in the way that they find interesting. And then soon, when you bring them together, they will find their own rhythm to develop themselves. I think what we are doing now in the council, for example, is that we try to build up a system that it can reproduce itself. I can quote an example, like since Pessin has been talking about leveraging expertise. I guess some of you, like a Korean friend, is doing like a joint alliance by different people from different sector. But maybe it's in our council we have a network of people we have a program called Social Angels. These Social Angels is a group of people coming from different sector and different industries. They have people from marketing, business management, finance management, whatever, you can name it. And these people just come to our council and then they would provide different kind of services and very practical solution-based kind of consultation to social enterprises that we're helping. And of course, at the very beginning, we have to build up that network ourselves, right? We have to leverage on our caring company scheme and then know this a lot of different people and try to convince them that now this is an opportunity, maybe you can help the social enterprise. But soon, when they find that there's some values that they can create by joining this program, a lot of individuals now, they would approach us themselves and try to volunteer themselves that, hey, I would like to be a social angels. I mean, and they can do it, that kind of consultation themselves. We don't need to, really, like at the very beginning, we have to input a lot of energy and effort ourselves. But if they can form a community themselves, then they would find their own logic to help this social enterprise. I think these are maybe this is also an opportunity, but maybe if it's a challenge, then the challenge is how you can bring together them as an organic community that they can help themselves.
So I think right now, a quick question for Stefan as well, right? So you're talking about scale. So when you talk about scale, what are some of the initiatives that you have, or what do you do to help them to scale? I think that would be one thing that I'm quite curious to find out a bit more as well. And also, how as you scale globally as well, how then do you link up to understanding the ecosystem and the context of each country, right? Because that is also in itself very difficult, right? So how do you address that?
I'm going to make it short because it's a lot of questions, but
Yeah.
let the room ask more in-depth questions. But the short version is a few elements. One is the legal structures we're going to form around the ventures. We're going to work with holding company structures that enable us to have executing companies in markets, but the IP is up in the holding company level. So that's one of the very basic things that we need to do to ensure that we can scale across countries easily. Another thing is, so corporate impact ventures are born big. It's like baby elephants, not like cute little enterprises. They're quite unwieldy. So there's a lot of issues around governance. You have to make sure that the relevant stakeholders around the table are governed appropriately. So things that might seem silly for a small social enterprise will seem pretty important when you're dealing with one or two or three corporations, along with maybe a big NGO, maybe a large national champion in a given developing market. So the governance structures around that have to be really well designed. And then there's the money question. So we're not talking about a few $1,000s here and there per venture. We're talking about a few $1 million here and there per venture at the different stages. And so of course we've put a lot of thought and effort into building the financial architecture to facilitate these kinds of deals at different stages of maturity. So I'd say governance, finance, and legal structures will be three of the mechanisms. I don't want to go into sort of the mechanics of the day-to-day business development activities. That's a much longer conversation.
Okay. And so I guess we'll open the floor to questions. There'll be mics in front at the aisle. So if anybody has questions, maybe you can just step forward and ask your questions and direct it to the whole panel, or if you have a specific person in mind. Well, if not, then actually the other question that I have for the panel is, if there are any specific trends that you're seeing in the sector, right? And how have you evolved, maybe in terms of your initiatives, or even you as an organization, how have you evolved? Right? And I'll open it to anyone to take up the question. Right.
Start again to round. I think I want to talk about really a couple of trends and challenges that are quite major in the sector. Just coming back to my point at the beginning, 50 million or about 50 million social entrepreneurs starting up every year, and we're only supporting a few thousand every year. So, why this gap, and how can we, support more people and really kind of get more social entrepreneurs to be successful social entrepreneurs? One of the real challenges is the resources available for incubation today. So when we look at the incubators and the organizations who are supporting early stage social entrepreneurs, more than half of those organizations are working with a majority of their income being restricted and a really kind of limited financial visibility over the years. So that means that these organizations have limited capacity to invest in their own organizations, in their own development, in the extension of the number of people that they can support. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is, I wouldn't say easy, but it's relatively easy to reach out to social entrepreneurs who are well networked, who are well educated, who are in urban centers. But how do you support social entrepreneurs who are in remote areas, in rural areas, in disadvantaged communities, even in suburbs? So really, it takes more energy, more efforts, more resources, more time to go out there and to support those people. So there needs to be more people, more grant makers, actually, more venture philanthropists who commit to those resources, who encourage the community to support those entrepreneurs who don't have access to the support that is available today. I would like also to talk about something that is kind of bubbling up in our community right now, which is around well-being. So we did a survey of the social entrepreneurs that we supported in the UK, and a large majority, above 80% of the social entrepreneurs who we reached out to said that they have had in the past year challenges around their own well-being. So that's something that is coming up, and we're looking into it as a community, hopefully. There are initiatives here and there around how can we also support the social entrepreneurs, not only on their ventures, not only on the business planning, on the financial planning, on the social impact, but on their own well-being as social entrepreneurs and as people. And the final one was really around talent. We talked about it for the social entrepreneurs yesterday, but I want to mention the talent challenge also for the intermediary organizations. So we did a piece of work funded by the BMW Foundation to look around what does talent issue mean for the intermediary organizations and actually the whole space. So we interviewed people from investing companies, from foundations, from intermediary organizations, looking at what it means for them, in terms of attraction, retention, and development of talent. And actually, there are a lot of issues in this space, and I hope that we'll be able to collectively work on those issues because it's quite a barrier, it's quite a challenge in terms of supporting further and more and better the social entrepreneurs that we're working with. So I just wanted to mention those 3 items, and we can discuss, hopefully, that will maybe prompt some questions.
Okay, so Pat was asking for some hands up. Let me do the same. Are there any social entrepreneurs here, or who's been just an entrepreneur, or anyone who had the experience of being an entrepreneur, or is willing to be an entrepreneur? Can I have hands up? Okay, so I've been thinking about the kind of challenges that we are going through in our company. And I would like to have a very honest conversation with you guys. So some of the things that we observe with the companies in our company and the companies that we work with is, number one, many social entrepreneurs are sort of tired hearing about social mission. Everywhere you go, every mentor you meet, every people, every customer, they talk about social mission. So what is your social agenda, right? Well, it is important. It is important. But for them, especially as entrepreneurs who've been doing their work for more than a couple of years, they are fully aware that social agenda or social mission is important. What they need is how to crystallize them, how to actually make a crystalled social agenda or social definition problem that they're trying to solve, and align them with the business. The second thing that we've noticed is that we invest into seed and startup level companies, and we incubate them. And two companies last year in 2015, they went through a Series A round of investment. In Korea, that means their valuation is between 8 to 12 million US dollars. So this means two things for us. One, even for them too. One, the days of concept pitch has ended. They cannot do a concept pitch anymore if you reach at the Series A level. Until Series A, you could show a very, a dreamy pitch, and people will buy into it. Okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You're going to solve a lot of social problems. It's all good. But if you go through a Series A round, that ends. Another thing is if you don't have systems in your company, or if you are not organized, then that's the end. A lot of startup companies, many people, including of course the CEOs, they do multiple roles. They put on multiple hats. They have many hands and feet, right? It works because when you are small size, that works, and you have to do that because you lack resources. But in order to scale up, that's the end. You cannot scale up anymore from that on. So that's another thing that we've noticed. Also about the team. You start, for example, for the companies that we invest, they start in their 20s. They do their business 3, 4, 5, 6 years pass, right? You reach the point where you get married, and when you get married, you will have children someday. You need a place to stay, live. You need more money, but your company is still at a similar stage or similar level. Your employees, you ask them for their passion, right? You say that we need to work hard hours. We're still startups. We have this spirit, but they age too. They grow up, right? And you still pay them the similar amount that they've been paid 2 to 3 years ago. So what many people I should say entrepreneurs, or the people who are working at these social startups are saying is, are we happy? We are making changes in the world, but are we happy? And this is an important question, because if they're not happy and they're making services and products, are our customers happy who are consuming those services and products? So these are very honest challenges that we see with the startup companies, especially as they grow up. Do we have all the answers? Unlikely, no. But we have some ideas, rough ideas. Like I said, many social entrepreneurs who have gone through seed or startup stage level, they know about the social mission that they need to pursue. What they need is a mechanism, a capital mechanism to make them go on, make them more sustainable. I say this with a little bit of caution because many people have different ideas about how to make organizations sustainable. But the way we say it, we do this because we say that we need to solve market failure. A lot of times we solve this market failure with non-market mechanisms. That is good. That is excellent. But at the same time, we are looking for more ways, better ways to solve this market failure with market mechanisms. Meaning that maybe we need to be more familiar with the capital terms. We know about change of theory. We know about the social impact. We know about carbohydrates. But are we more familiar with the capital terms? How can we use that to make it into ours? How can actually penetrate into the market, and how can we do better what we do? Because in the end, what we want is a greater impact. We want greater social impact, and we want to make companies like Facebook and Google. I'm not just saying that big size companies, but companies who can have people who are really excellent and talented, and who can do great things together. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring out some of the challenges that we are experiencing. Maybe next year we'll have more answers, better answers to this. And the subject of the session will be how to make a successful social ventures. Yeah.
There's a question.
Yeah.
I think I'll just share one thing among several things, which I thought would be an interesting place for all of us after this conference to think about. We tend to, just coming back to what Wan Young said earlier about the capital terms, I think from a funding perspective, we tend to, at a certain point, look at traditional funding instruments as the means through which social ventures can grow to bring in the right kinds of capital. But I suspect that at this stage, and particularly in Asia, it may be time for us to look at something different. And I would encourage, if there are ways for us to be more innovative about pairing up different kinds of financing instruments, whether they are philanthropic in nature or investments in nature, to start looking at how that can truly help a social enterprise achieve its growth targets. I'm being very cautious related to that on another point about what are some of the challenges. I think we're all getting a little bit confused now in the industry about what's sustainable versus what's scalable. What is a sustainable social venture, and does that equate sustainable social impact? Is scalability needed for sustainability? It may all sound like semantics, but intuitively, if you know that you're working with early stage, there will be a late stage, right? So how do we see our role as people who are championing social impact and trying to grow social impact in terms of continually reinforcing I must see sustainability? To me, that's a very important thing to talk about, because once we get to a point where a social enterprise is, or even an incubator for that matter, has moved past the point of developing a new idea, when you're reaching the litmus test of whether or not the entrepreneur can go the distance because maybe personal obligations and life stages are in play, if the product needs to be continually developed, but they don't have the resources to do so. If you need to move the organization from being founder-driven to being team-run. These are all very real challenges that every social enterprise at that particular stage of growth will have to contend with if they are to become, quote-unquote, a sustainable or a scalable social enterprise. But what we found is that there hasn't yet been really any concerted effort to address that transition. And I think we need to really think seriously about that, because if we keep thinking that the pioneer gap is one nice, gentle bridge, I think we're fooling ourselves. Not only is it not a nice, gentle bridge, sometimes the bridge has a gap in the middle. And there's a very steep curve, actually, for the ones that have been able to cross that and to be able to really create kind of social impact that that they're desirous of. I know the couple of social entrepreneurs in this room and many social entrepreneurs that are outside today. We've seen them over the many years, and it's sometimes very disillusioning and disheartening when you hear the same challenge that they told us 3 years ago, they're still facing it today. So this is something that I would say, if we're really truly looking to exercise venture philanthropy in that context, to build that kind of social impact, let us challenge ourselves as an industry to think innovatively about this.
I'm not sure whether I will be able to address the question about the gap, because I think whether the social enterprises or the incubators, they must have a lot of gaps. Once I thought that it was money, but in fact it is not money, because like a society like Hong Kong, in fact we have a lot of money from the government, from donors, from corporation. What they need are ideas. And that's why I point out when I receive a lot of proposals from social innovators, what I find is that they are aware of certain problems, but they may not be able to formulate a social problem in a way that is intelligible to others. Like I give you a very concrete example. 2 weeks ago perhaps, I come across a proposal on a prototype. I think he is trying to do something like our Korean friend is doing. But if he can frame in a way that he framed his business, that may be worth a lot more. But they simply do not. A lot of people are very passionate, but being passionate is not enough. You have to be knowledgeable, you have to be informed, you have to be expressive in a way that is intelligible to people. I think there are a lot of capacity issues that to be filled here. So, but that may goes back to the point that Christian talked about talent. Well, I do not. Maybe I myself is not a talented person, right? But I think I don't believe in talent in one single person or any individual. So I think the talent should come from how you pull all these talents, different talents, into a community or different communities. So for me, if we talk about scale, it's not about the scale of the business, it's the scale of that community. So I like the comment from the previous sessions that I attended about the role of government in promoting social enterprise. Cliff Pyre from Big Capital Society, right, in UK, he mentioned that scale is not about how big you're doing. The scale can be a community of a lot of little project, a lot of little initiative, which may not be having a very big scale, but put them all together, that can be a very big scale. So, because I'm working in a very local context as a council, right, in Hong Kong, we are not looking at regional articulation or global articulation. But if you look at how our problems are now being generated in every single society, you know that it may have something to do with how our world is being organized globally, and how we should find a solution from the local context and do a lot of different small things, and hoping that we can, by having all these little small things and bring all these people together, we can then create a bigger impact that is beyond an individual social business. Yeah, that's my short comment.
All right. So I think just in closing, I think what we've heard from the panel is really, it's important to just continuously test our assumptions and ask the right questions, right? And really customize our programs accordingly, and not so much just force the structure. Because sometimes we might be just setting the wrong KPIs and just forcing the process and just going through the motion without understanding what is the true impact or true outcome that we are seeking to achieve. And I think at the end of the day also, we're not doing things alone. We're really building an ecosystem. So leveraging on the right partners, understanding where your gaps are as an organization, and understanding how you can pull the right people together to fill these gaps are also important in building a sustainable venture. And so with that, I think we'll have a time for networking, and the panel will be around. If you have any questions, feel free to approach them. If not, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.